Hi, I'm Sabrina Solba, a game designer, and I'm here to offer you some tips as you embark on your Aphasia Games for Health project. This advice comes from my experience with teams working on transformational games. Transformational games are games with a purpose beyond entertainment, artistic expression, or market success. They are designed to change players and the world beyond players. Working on these games usually means collaborating with subject matter experts, audience members, and other stakeholders during your development process. And when creating a transformational game, it is especially important to build a strong shared understanding of the design problem you're trying to solve. So I want to start with a few tips on that. Orient around a high-level purpose. Your high-level purpose is the big picture why for your team. Why are you doing this? Why does making this game matter? This purpose shouldn't be about your game or a game, but a big idea that goes beyond games. For Aphasia Games for Health, there's a ready-made high-level purpose you can use. Fight social isolation and language loss. This is a big idea. It's concise but inspiring. It's a great candidate for your team's high-level purpose. Once you've agreed on your high-level purpose, put this phrase up by your desk or someplace else where you will see it often. This is your North Star. Like the real North Star, your journey isn't to actually completely reach this goal through your game. Instead, this purpose should serve as a constant direction check for you and your team. Are you working towards your high-level purpose with each of your decisions? Prioritize the voices of your audience. Your audience are the people you're making your game for, the people you want to play your game and benefit from it. Hopefully, you've got individuals with first-hand experience or expertise in aphasia on your team or working closely with your team. It's really important, I think, to have that authentic voice embedded in your design process. I want to encourage you to find members of your audience outside your team as well. Having more than one perspective can give you a clearer sense of what is individual preference or experience and what is consistent across your audience. And when testing your game, you're going to want to put it in front of members of your audience who don't have all the insider backstory that team members and partners will have. I recommend defining a target audience that's more than simply players with aphasia. Aphasia has many presentations. Will your game target a particular subset? And think beyond aphasia. Is your game for kids or young adults or older adults? Are you looking to tap into existing gaming communities and popular genres? And if so, what are the implications for your target audience? Are you envisioning that players will engage with your game on their own? Or are you making something that might be used in a school or therapy setting? Depending on your target audience, the context for your game may change significantly. Who the game is played with, where and when it's played, what themes and tones would be appropriate, and the type of scaffolding or instructional support you'll need to create for your players. One useful technique you can use is to create what are called personas, fictional profiles of example players that exemplify your team's understanding of your audience's contextual details that you should be keeping in mind as you design. Make an impact by identifying a barrier you can address. To find where your game can make a meaningful impact, ask yourself, why isn't your high-level purpose already fulfilled? What stands in between your audience and this purpose? This could be something like access to resources such as time or money. It could be social norms that fight against your high-level purpose. Maybe it's your audience's motivation or a misconception they hold or even a fear. Maybe there's a skill or ability they lack. These are variations of barriers. Barriers are things that prevent or hinder your audience's transformation and the achievement of your high-level purpose. Barriers are also powerful tools for your team for two reasons in particular. First, they represent gaps where there is opportunity for your game to create impact and fill a need that is not already being met through other means. Barriers are also great catalysts for gameplay ideas because they are fundamentally about problems that must be overcome. Games are also usually centered on some kind of problem-solving activity. So think through what would have to change about your audience or the world around your audience for a particular barrier to be overcome. Then consider how your game could support or represent that same change through your mechanics or game content. This is a space where your team's subject matter experts or audience members who have personal experience and expertise with aphasia can really bring a lot of insight. Create a list of barriers for your audience, then discuss where you think your team could potentially have the biggest impact through your game. Choose one or two barriers to focus on. Articulate how your game will change players. If your high-level purpose is your why, your player transformations are your what. What is the direct impact your game will make on the world? Players will come into your game experience your game, and they'll leave impacted or transformed, hopefully in the way that you and your team intended and in a way that addresses your target barriers and supports your high-level purpose. There are lots of different ways you could impact players as part of your Aphasia Games for Health project. You could focus on improving players' recovery of a particular symptom of aphasia. Your game could give friends and family an experience that helps them better understand what it's like to have aphasia. You could give players with aphasia the confidence that they can call themselves gamers and be part of a gaming community. You could support a habit of game playing between players with aphasia and their friends and family without aphasia. One exercise to help you focus in on your core transformational impact is to try completing this sentence as a team. In our game, our audience will change in this way in order to your high-level purpose. For example, in our game, adults with aphasia will improve their ability to speak short sentences in order to reduce social isolation and language loss. Or in our game, older adults with aphasia and their grandchildren will build a habit of playing games together in order to reduce social isolation and language loss. Notice that these examples describe a change and end with a high-level purpose. As you move forward with your design, you should be able to start to connect what the player does in the game to your player transformation and in turn to your high-level purpose. So you should be able to say things like, in our game, our audience will do this, which will help them change in this way in order to your high-level purpose. For example, in our game, adults with aphasia will play a verbal party game with others that will improve their ability to speak short sentences. Or in our game, older adults with aphasia and their grandchildren will solve a weekly cooperative puzzle, which will build a habit of playing games together. And all of this in order to reduce social isolation and language loss. This sentence encapsulates a theory of transformation for your game, and being able to articulate it simply and clearly will help your team have a strong shared vision. Don't attempt to think your way to the right game. Sometimes teams start out investing a lot of time trying to come up with the perfect idea. They'll think and talk, but still feel uncertain if they've got the right one. With transformational games, you might also have some uncertainties about your target audience, or barriers, or player transformation. You probably can't read all the relevant research or talk to your subject matter expert enough to be 100% confident your game idea will work. That is okay. There are no perfect ideas. The things that you can think and plan up front about your game are limited. There's a whole host of things that you will only learn through building and iterating on your game. I can tell you that the first version of any game is confusing and broken in significant ways, no matter how much thought you put into it, and especially if you're trying to do anything new, innovative, or transformative. So the secret is to get to that first version early and then iterate. In games, the engine that fuels that iteration is playtesting. By playtesting, I'm talking about putting an unfinished version of your game in front of your audience to get their feedback. You should be doing this multiple times before you finish your game, with each playtest guiding your next game iteration. So try this. As a team, sit down and look at your development schedule. Whatever your deadline is, that's when you need to have a finished version of your game. Okay, now cut your schedule in half, then in halves again. Plan to have some version of your game at each of these points in your schedule that you could playtest with members of your audience. Of course, you can do more iterations if you like, depending on your timeline and resources, but plan for at least these 3 major iterations. Now, decide what you should build first for that first playtest milestone. Don't worry about also planning the features for each future milestone. Focus on the first version you could build, scoping your plans given the time you have until that first playtest. Knowing what you know now and with the resources you have, what will you build first? Then, once you playtest and learn new things, you can iterate both your game and your understanding of your design problem. A strong iteration process powered by regular playtesting will help your team move forward, find out faster what's working and what's not, and in the end, make a better game. Visualize the results you want to see. As you playtest, not only are you looking for if your game is engaging and if players understand how to play, but you'll also want to evaluate if it's having the impact you want it to have. To try to figure all this out, you'll probably use these 2 major methods during playtesting: observing players while they play your game and getting feedback from your players after the game is over. This might be an interview or a written survey or some combination. These are forms of playtesting that are relatively easy for teams to do, but what should your observations and those player answers look like to convince you that you're on the right path? In a beautiful dream world, what do you hope players will do while playing your game? What do you hope they'll say afterwards when asked about their game experience? Create a vision for your team by making a short list of questions and data you'd like to collect to demonstrate your game's impact. And also, create your idealized answers. My favorite is to make up quotes that would be great to hear from players. This process can help your team understand its own priorities. What do you need to focus on in the game to get players to give the kind of feedback that you're hoping for, the kind of feedback that you believe shows you're on the right track? Document your iterations and decisions. This project isn't just about the game that you'll have when you finish. It's also about what you learn along the way and what you and others can take away from your game to build on for the future. Your team's process, including how and why you made key decisions, are rich artifacts for future teams. Take regular videos and screenshots. Take notes, even if they are brief, on what changes your team decided to make and why. Creating this documentation in the moment is a powerful tool of reflection and introspection and may actually lead you and your team to deeper insights on what you're currently building. But after this project is over, this kind of documentation is also great to have if you decide to continue your project in the future, or if other teams come looking to your project for inspiration. I hope these tips help jumpstart your team's design process. Remember, you're designing with a high-level purpose. Keep the pieces of your design problem front and center in your mind as you build, playtest, and iterate your game experience. A lot of these tips stem from the Transformational framework, which is the tool I've used with teams to help build a shared design problem understanding for transformational games. If you want to dig more into the Transformational framework, you can go to transformationalframework.com. Thank you for being part of Aphasia Games for Health. Good luck to you and your team. Make something together that you're proud of that will change the world.